Hey everybody, welcome to Life is Beautiful. I'm Anthony and I wanted to do something a little bit different with this channel. I don't think the beer YouTube community or pretty much just beer internet personalities altogether get enough attention, and I don't think that they really get to express themselves outside of just their usual daily beer reviews and everything like that. And I kind of wanted to talk to some people about what life is like on beer YouTube. So luckily for me, one of the first people to ever do the damn thing is Simon from Real Ale Craft Beer, and he was gracious enough to sit down with me and talk about the past, the present, and potentially the possibly dystopian future of what beer YouTube will look like in the future. So let's go ahead and jump into that interview. So excited. Thank you very much for joining me, Simon. Extremely excited to have you here. Your channel, Real Ale Craft Beer. If you go through YouTube's current advanced search settings and you type in beer reviews and stuff like that, you are the first channel that pops up if you sort by oldest. You might be the first beer reviewing YouTube channel on the history of YouTube. Is that right?
Ooh, there's actually about 3 or 4 before me. I think one of the first ever channels was an American channel. His name was JJ David. Joe D, they called him. I think he was about 2 years before me. Then we had Chad 9976, who was a beer reviewer, just before me by about a year. And then I think it was the Master of Hoppets, who was a month older. He started in the December of the 2009.
Yeah. Wow.
And I started in the January of 2010. So I think I'm about the fourth oldest channel on YouTube. And I apologize if I've missed anybody as well.
Either way, you were definitely in that pioneering category that kind of developed and laid down the foundation for this massive influx of people that we have today. What was your inspiration originally getting into doing beer reviews on YouTube?
It was actually phone reviews. My interest was, it was the kind of the first couple of years of Android being launched, and I was a massive fan of the Android platform, and I'd look at all of the different phones that were coming out from Motorola and Samsung and HTC at the time. And I thought, I was watching a phone review one day with a beer in my hand. And I thought to myself, I wonder if anyone's ever reviewed a beer on YouTube. So I went from there. I was watching this phone review, and I just thought, right, I think I'm going to do a beer review. So I did it on my laptop. I set up a channel, pressed record, and it all kind of just went from there.
Yeah. I've seen some people talk about how they wanted to do beer review journalism or anything before that. What inspired you to do it on YouTube as your platform?
I realized from, I think I only really got into YouTube in 2009 in a big way, where I watched an awful lot of videos. And for the first time in my life, I thought to myself, you could do something if you have an interest in something without having to have, the jumping through hoops on the television at the time was the thing to do. You'd have to have an agent, and they'd have to try and find you some work. And this was all about starting up your own channel, making up your own videos of what you're interested in. And hopefully there's people out there with enough interest that you have for the subject that they'll watch your videos, and it was based off that, I think. And of course, I really like a beer. I'm a big fan of beer. Anyway, I drink beer. I'll probably stay in this bar that I'm building. I'll probably stay in that and then have a beer after.
Yeah. So speaking of your love for beer, you are probably one of the hardest working beer reviewers I've seen. You pump out more beer reviews weekly than most channels. Do you ever experience any type of burnout? I think when we were talking, you said you're in the double digits weekly of beer reviews. Do you ever get tired of it or burnt out?
So I do 4 on a Saturday, 4 on a Sunday, and that's 8. And then 5 during the week. So that's 13, something like that. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe a few more because I do food reviews, a couple of food reviews as well. So it's probably about 18 videos a week.
Wow.
Maybe a few more.
Yeah. That's more
I
than.
just find it a load of fun. I still find it a load of fun, but I do have, like any situation, me being a carpenter before this, there'd be mornings where I woke up and thought, I don't want to go and hang them 8 doors. But you do that to feed your family. And I think if you treat it like a job, if you can drive past them, I don't get it an awful lot, but there are moments where I go, this is real hard work. This is real hard work. But I think you just got to drive through it. I think you've just got to just keep yourself going, and then you'll hit them seams, like them coal seams. You'll hit them coal seams of enjoying it, and that's what you're looking for, the enjoyment out of it, just to kind of ride out. I suppose the good and the bad, if you like. Having bad moments where you're like, this is an awful lot of work. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I wake up naturally about 6, 7 a.m. in the morning, so I'm there 1 o'clock editing videos. And it is tiring. It is tiring, but you carry on. You carry on driving yourself. You carry on pushing yourself forward.
Yeah, so it's certainly a passion for you, right?
Still a passion, yeah. I love drinking stouts and porters and all the different New England IPAs. I think the thing that keeps it very refreshing is that you're only ever 1 or 2 years away from a new beer style coming out.
True.
And then you have to try, and then of course, it might start off this style of being a little bit rough around the edges, and then you have the breweries who really perfect that style. And you go through the journey of drinking that beer and enjoying that style. So it kind of reinvents itself all of the time, I think, beer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I used to do beer reviews a long time ago, and I tried to keep up with the daily schedule that you see a lot of reviewers do, and I felt that burnout. So when I looked at your channel, I am just amazed at your work ethic. But it's interesting to see that passion, that energy is still there, and it's honestly inspiring, since I think most beer reviewers stick with it for about 2 to 3 years, but with your longevity, I mean, I don't know, it's a bit inspiring for me to see somebody with so much passion for it and doing a lot of good work. I think in some of your earlier videos, you prefaced them like saying that it was a guide for people to learn about different beers. That way, when they went out, they would have some type of, predisposed opinion to it, whether it was a good beer or not. Is that still one of your main drivers for your channel?
Yeah. Just again, as I spoke in the very early days, just to review as many different beers as possible. Being a lover of beer, being a fan of beer, and the biggest when you're reviewing these beers, especially say a Marston's Pedigree or a Courage Bitter, some of the very, very early beer reviews, maybe 10 years ago now. It's interesting, you still get comments on the videos. And then them early beer reviews where people, they enjoy a Marston's Pedigree, or they might enjoy a Cobra Lager or something like that. They watch that video, and then they may then watch your latest upload. And they may look at it and go, I didn't even know this beer style existed.
Yeah.
I didn't even know this. And then the biggest satisfaction, the biggest enjoyment for me still reviewing beer is the fact when I get a comment, somebody saying, you've opened my eyes to beer, and I'm buying all of these different beer now. And I'm so excited by the world of beer. That's still the biggest thing that puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, that's really cool. Have you ever had the adverse? Have you ever had a brewery or anybody reach out to you and say they weren't like too happy with anything you've put out or said?
Yeah. Sorry. I think I've had a few where 1 or 2 breweries have asked me to take the video down. Mm-hmm. I had one instance actually with a couple of book writers who they put a beer out into a UK supermarket, Marks and Spencer's. I won't mention the name of the blog or the book writing, or it wasn't a video blog. It was book writing and kind of journalism. And they produced this Pilsner with a company in the Czech Republic. And I always have a little back then I always used to have a little dig around. I don't have so much time anymore. But I looked at this Pilsner. I looked at the brewery that produced the Pilsner for them, and the headline company, if you like, was owned by somebody like Heineken. So I questioned it in my beer review because it wasn't the greatest of Pilsners. I questioned this Pilsner. I said, this is not the greatest of Pilsner. And in fact, the owner of this brewery is in fact Heineken or Carlsberg. And I had awful trouble with this blog, these book writing people who were saying that the information you were giving out was incorrect and it was produced with the. And I said no, but the owner company is Heineken or Carl. I can't remember which one it was, or one of the big green companies.
Yeah.
And it went on, and they were talking about suing me, and so. I just let it go. I just put the video onto private. Let it go for a few months, and then I put it back public.
Yeah.
Because the beer didn't last long anyway. It wasn't as if it was going to be the next kind of massive thing. It didn't last long in the supermarkets, and I think they gave up on the idea. So I made the video public again as a kind of a reference to what that beer was, because it did exist once upon a time.
Yeah. So we've had. We've talked about people who have been extremely interested and who have been inspired by your beer reviews, and then we've seen producers who have not been so happy with your beer reviews. My question to you is, what do you think the significance of beer reviews are? Like, do you see them as being an integral part of the beer community?
That's a really good question. Because when I started as a beer reviewer on YouTube, and I think a few of the other people who started on YouTube were a little bit frustrated that, to begin with, were a little bit frustrated that they wasn't accepted into the wider like beer journalism.
Yeah.
Like some of the big beer writers they write for newspapers, whether it be the Guardian or the New York Times or wherever you are in the world, there's always a big kind of newspaper beer writer. And when we first started on YouTube, it was almost like scoffed at, Now you have these kind of experts on YouTube talking about beer. So for the first few years, it was a definite kind of like more of a struggle to be taken seriously, to be relevant in this world. But now in the last 2 years, there's been a couple of channels that have actually won awards. So things are starting to change.
Cool.
Things are starting to change.
Yeah, I definitely get that. And I think that it's not just a problem with the beer reviewing community, but I think it's a problem with the YouTube landscape as a whole.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to get into comedy or entertainment or whatever. And for some reason, they're kind of looked down upon for choosing YouTube as their platform.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see it as being any less valid or anything. I mean, the way I look at beer reviews, I see them as a very integral part of the beer community in a historical sense. Because as you mentioned, that beer that you reviewed that you had trouble with, it's gone. And it could completely disappear from people's minds 10, 15 years and all the record books. But you have documented it, you've solidified it, and you've put out some type of opinion piece on it. And I think that is massive. As long as YouTube exists, there's going to be this massive Alexandria library of thoughts and opinions on beer reviews. So I don't know. I didn't really have a question.
That. I actually loved that that thought of maybe in 50 years' time, the liquid being poured into the glass at that time, with that carbonation. And I tell you a good one. My Brewdog, or a good example of it, would be my Brewdog Punk IPA video. Mm-hmm. I was the first person to review that on YouTube, and it was hazy. It almost looked like a Vermont style IPA. It was really hazy, big head, 6% ABV. And now you look at the beer, and the beer is very, very different from that early Punk IPA. Mm-hmm. So you can almost like put the beer, if you bought a Punk IPA now and found my beer review, you might be looking at the beer thinking, is this the same beer? It's clear, and the ABV's lowered.
Yeah, that is interesting, seeing people go through reviewing the beers over and over again, seeing it change. But not only that, seeing your palate change, it definitely documents the journey of not just the beer, but the beer reviewer.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you've been doing beer reviews, pumping out more beer reviews than pretty much anybody for a long time. Has your relationship with beer changed at all? Like, do you find yourself drinking beers just for YouTube, or do you still genuinely enjoy sitting down, hanging out, drinking a beer? You know,
there's two sides. There's two sides to my beer drinking. There's the work side, where I analyse it thoroughly. The glass of beer, and you're pressing your record on the camera, and you've set your tripod up, and you've set your lights up. You've analysed the beer, then you have to edit the video, put it on YouTube. I always do about 4 beer reviews at the same time, so that I can take them to my computer, my Mac, and I can edit all of the videos, and I've got a few beers to drink whilst I'm doing it, and that really helps. And then there's other times then where I mentioned earlier, I'm going to sand this this nice bar that I'm making. The sun's shining. I'll probably put the first coat on and get myself a Francis can of Weiss beer or something nice and cold to sit in the garden. Yeah. And I switch off. I switch off completely to analysing the beer, to picking out all the different flavours. I like to sit back and just think about, or look at the plants and trees growing and the birds in the garden, and just enjoying the beer. Having a beer with my wife, just enjoying it, not analysing it, not kind of. I suppose what I'm saying is I could probably finish 3 beers and not have any idea what hops were in it or what malts, because I've just switched off to the work and the play.
I definitely think that is crucial, that ability to compartmentalize it. Yeah. You know, I am not one of those people. I was not able to do that. Yeah. I was one of those people. I was sitting at a restaurant trying to enjoy a burger or whatever with the wife, and I was drinking a beer, and the only thing I could think of is, I wish I had a camera right now, that way I could talk about it, you know? So yeah, I do think that leads to a lot of burnout in people who want to get into this. Is there any advice you would give people nowadays who want to get into beer YouTube or anything like that? Like, how would you encourage them to have the longevity that you've had?
On this very subject, I've noticed an absolute influx of new channels hitting YouTube, especially with all the pubs being shut and people being forced to drink packaged products, home keg beer machines from the Krups, or bottles and cans. And of course, naturally then, when people are buying these different beers in the supermarkets and they're experimenting with different beers, they may watch a few YouTube videos of it, and they may think, yeah, I can do that myself, you know. And I've seen so many new channels, and since lockdown happened in March, come about. So I'm going to give advice to those channels who have just started off, and that keep it fun. Keep it fun. What I've noticed with new channels is that when they begin and they're kind of 100 miles an hour, they're 100 miles an hour. You can see they're reviewing. Some people are doing 5 or 6 beers a day, and they're really pumping them out onto YouTube. And like you mentioned earlier on, there's a burnout. There's a burnout stage to it. So what I would say is hold the enthusiasm back, hold some of the reviews back, and just post them maybe 1 or 2 a day, or when you've got time. Don't feel pressured to produce a video on YouTube, because the fun then will go away very quickly. The moment you think I have to get the camera out, when I maybe should be going for a walk with a wife or playing with the kids, thinking I have to go and review that beer, that's when the fun goes away very, very quickly.
So speaking of this new, well, speaking of just beer reviewers in general, you talked earlier about how people kind of looked down on beer reviewers in the early days, and I remember that time period, and I remember a lot of discussion on the internet of different forums about, what gives this person the authority to be able to review or put their opinion out. Do you believe that there is a need for like certifications, like your Cicerones or BJCPs or anything like that?
In the UK, we have something called the sommelier. Do you have that in America, the sommelier course?
Yes, yeah.
I'm not a beer sommelier. I'm not qualified in any of these qualifications at all. But I personally don't think I'll ever become a beer sommelier, or I don't think I will ever look to become qualified in any of the, to have a certificate on the wall to say that you're qualified to be able to talk about beer and talk about tastes, and maybe give tastings to people in public or on YouTube. I think after drinking over 6,100 beers, I think that gives me, like myself personally, an automatic kind of qualification to review beer. But I think on YouTube, there will be people who start reviewing beer maybe, and they might be reading the back of the bottle and giving a lot of flavours, what they should be tasting that's on the back of the bottle. They might be just reading that out to the camera. And I think the viewer will choose who they want to kind of watch, if that makes any sense. And I think that's the qualification, is that they'll find somebody who they like, who they think that maybe their taste buds are close to their taste buds type of thing, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. After you're a certain amount of time, you get that familiarity with beer styles or hops or whatever styles. And I definitely agree. You might have those certifications, those people, whatever, but you don't get much more knowledge from reading a book, I don't believe, than you would actually experiencing and drinking a beer and exploring the flavors, the hops and everything. So I definitely agree. I think that the experience that you get from doing your beer reviews, I think that's just as valuable as any actual certification. And
absolutely. I mean, going back to it, you could be, 1 week you could be interested in beer. I mean, you've fallen into love with this world of beer after 1 week, and you realise I may have a spare few £100 or whatever it costs to become a beer sommelier. And then you do this day's course in this pub in London to become a beer sommelier. So over the space of 7 days, you've gone from getting into beer to becoming a beer sommelier. Yeah. And how does that count for experience,
Yeah, exactly. And plus, I understand the desire, the need for so much knowledge. I mean, even on my bookshelf, I've got several of like the defining books of how to taste beer, all that stuff. And it's interesting to know, but I mean, if a new beer style comes out, like you were talking about earlier, these books are almost immediately invalidated. If you don't have that backbone, that experience to know what different mouthfeel are like, or what different flavors are. You're just gonna be out in the woods. So I definitely agree. I think the people who put so much pressure on people to get accredited and everything like that, I feel that it's just unnecessary. But I don't know. That's just one of the interesting things that I've been thinking about for the past couple of years. Because in the beginning, I saw a lot of very respected people. Your Louisiana Beer Review, some other people, they were all getting hounded because they were like, "Oh, you're not a Cicerone, or are you a BJCP?"
No, yeah, I mean, and yeah, Louisiana Beer Reviews. I mean, he's reviewed thousands and thousands of beers, like myself. Another great channel on YouTube that I follow. The fact that he may not be a beer sommelier, or you mentioned, is it LBC you mentioned?
There's a whole bunch of them.
The accreditations then. The fact that he doesn't have one, but I mean, he can pull out flavors of banana and clove and pull out all of the different hops. That's, for me, that's the experience. That's the qualification. Mm-hmm. Myself as a carpenter, when I first became a carpenter, it was a 3.5-year course. But my lecturer, when I left on the last day, said, "Now you're about to start your apprenticeship, because you have to go in people's homes and frames are all over the place where you've got to hang a door, and that's when you really become a carpenter. Is by going out and gaining the experience. And of course, it's same can be said for beer reviewing. Get them reviews under your belt. Get the beers reviewed and learn the beer styles and fantastic."
So I've seen complaints that beer YouTube has gotten kind of stale in recent years. Do you think it's still possible for somebody to decide they want to start reviewing beer, jump onto YouTube, start creating an account, and find success in the world of beer reviews on YouTube?
There's a lot of people. There's an awful lot of people out there. It's a tough one. I think what you need is uniqueness. I think you need to come in and be unique. One channel that I follow that's been going a couple of years he's called the Beer Hooligan, and I started watching him because he's unique. He's a little bit controversial, but he's very unique. He'll do some barbecue videos with the beers. He'll teach you how to build a pub shed in the garden. He'll buy the Krups machine and the perfect draft, and he'll do reviews of them. I think it's about being unique now. It's maybe a little bit more than just beer. So I started doing kind of like your favorite bag of peanuts that you would have with a beer, and just freshen it up a little bit, bring a bit of food in.
Yeah.
So I think you need, to answer your question, it would be definitely just to be unique. Get out there, and if you do the same thing as the other 50 people, then it's going to be a struggle for your channel to get viewed, I think, personally.
Well, that's actually pretty interesting to think about. So when you look at other sects of YouTube, other recesses and corners, you often see that with success, people will start investing heavily in better equipment, better setups, things like that, to be able to elevate their channels. But you really don't see that happen so much in beer YouTube. You often see some of the earliest channels who are still kicking today, and you see some of the biggest YouTube channels pretty much have very basic setups. Sometimes just recording on just an old phone or an old camera or something like that. I mean, it certainly gets the job done, but there's not a whole lot of production value in it. So my question to you is, do you think that if reviewers focused heavily on production value and video quality control, that they would see more growth?
I think it's the actual reviewer themselves. I watch. I'll start off with saying this might be a long answer because I've changed things up significantly in the past, and then gone back to my original beer styling. So I started to watch Casey Neistat on YouTube, and I watched him kind of where he had something in the foreground that's still, like in my case, a beer bottle stood there. And then he would like, that bottle was always going to be stood there in shot. And then he would fast forward the kind of the background. So a boat might go past really quickly, a big liner. And I thought I like that idea. So I went down about 2 or 3 years ago, I bought a drone. I bought GoPros to go out and specifically make really, really interesting introductions to the beer review. Like I used to line the bottles up on a shelf here with the camera below, and I might fast forward the clouds kind of like rolling by really quickly, and then the name of the beer might come up into some writing. And to be honest, it didn't make a blind bit of difference. all of that extra work. You might have a few comments, people saying, fantastic intro to the video, but then it's back into the beer review. You've done your intro, which might take an hour, and then you're doing a 5-minute, 6-minute beer review. So that really didn't last long with me. I just didn't have the time to keep producing this fantastic, flashy content. And I think it's the person behind the camera. We're talking here today. I'm talking to you on my iPhone. You'd never believe it, but I mean, well, certainly 10 years ago, you never would have believed that. But the quality of the cameras, the quality of the phones, I don't think you need a massive setup. Maybe put a little muffled microphone on your iPhone or your Samsung, and away you go.
Yep, exactly. I'm looking at you into a $10 webcam I bought off of Amazon.
Exactly.
I bought this microphone from Walmart.
You've got your background, you've got your Paul boxes, and your background is fantastic. I really like that.
Oh, thank you very much.
I mean, and that's, for me, that's the interesting part of the channel, because you've got a lot going on behind you.
Thank you. All right, so my last question to you, Simon. You've been here since the beginning. You were one of the earliest channels, and you are still kicking. And honestly, you're kicking way harder than most channels are, even the newer ones. So I just kind of want to know, how has beer YouTube changed since the beginning? And where do you think it's heading?
What's changed? I think that the difference is just when I started, I don't think you could ask 1,000 people in the street if they ever watched a beer review on YouTube. And now with so many beer reviewers out there and so many passionate people out there, I think if you ask 1,000 people now if they know about beer reviews on YouTube, you might get a few people saying, yeah, I know that there's beer reviews on YouTube. And that's made things a little bit easier, I think, for the newer reviewers to come out, and they might produce their first video and get 150, 200 views. And for me, wow, that was fantastic, because when I started, one of the first, I think it was the first UK beer reviewer, it would take 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get your video to 200 views. Yeah. So I think straight away now what's changed is there's more of a, what's the word? There's more of an understanding that there's beer reviews on YouTube. And the second part of the question, where are we all heading? Have you seen any of my live shows that I've done on a Tuesday and a Friday? I think that new concept might take off, where we do a virtual pub, especially with the pubs being shut at the moment. There seems to be a lot, especially, well, from my experience, there seems to be a lot of big breweries now contacting me, emailing me, wanting to do stuff with me, and I think that's just the viewership. That's just the viewership. So I think going forward, you never know. Your big boys, your InBevs and your Heinekens, your Carlsbergs, my prediction is that they will either set up what we're doing on YouTube as beer reviewers and do their own thing professionally, maybe add some chef in there cooking some food, make it all look really, really kind of professional, and advertise it and get people to watch it. Or they may, my prediction is that they may purchase a beer reviewing channel on YouTube.
Whoa. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I mean, if you look at it, AB InBev, they've already dipped their toes into the world of purchasing beer reviews. You know, they purchased Rate Beer. They definitely have already made a heavy investment into the world of beer reviews. It makes a lot of sense that they would go ahead and purchase a YouTube channel. I mean, that's direct feedback.
Being a YouTuber yourself, you know the data.
Yeah.
I think Budweiser bought Rate Beer for the data, the actual knowledge behind it all. And being a YouTuber yourself, you know the data that's there. I could tell you how many women between 35 and 45 drink stouts on a Friday night, just by that 6,100 beer reviews, going into your analytics and diving deep into the analytics. That's what they'll come for, I think. I think that's what they'll come for. But I've had one brewery interested. It wasn't a massive brewery, but I have had one brewery interested in purchasing the channel, but it was a dead no. I'm still enjoying it. I'm still enjoying it to sell it.
Yeah. I mean, I've had sponsorships from Diageo where they've sent me stuff, and some other smaller craft brewers in America, and I don't know, maybe I was thinking too small. I was thinking that was the peak, you know, like getting the sponsorships. And unfortunately, I lost those sponsorships because I didn't like their beer and I said something negative about it. But I told them, you know, I'm going to maintain my integrity.
Fair play to you.
Yeah. Wow. That is honestly game changing. I don't know how I've been so short sighted and not thought of that, but God, it makes so much sense. I wonder who will be the first YouTube channel to make that crossover. Wow, this has been eye-opening.
Yeah.
Well, Simon, thank you so much for joining me. It has been an absolute treat, an absolute pleasure. You have been a huge inspiration of mine for years, and I just can't thank you enough for sitting down and joining me. If there's anything you'd like to shout out, or if you would like to tell people where they are able to find your channel, please go ahead. Do so, please.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Anthony, for having me on. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed the interview. The channel is called Real Ale Craft Beer, or put in Real Ale Guide into YouTube. You'll find us. I suppose you'll put a link in the description box of your video. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Instagram is Real Ale Guide. Facebook, which I don't use too much anymore, is Real Ale Craft Beer. And Twitter is Real Ale Today. But please, check out and subscribe our main channel on YouTube, Real Ale Guide. That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
So in conclusion, that was one of the greatest beer conversations I've ever had with somebody. It was incredibly interesting to see, you know, almost, or actually around 10 years plus of like beer YouTube knowledge since almost the foundation, the beginning of beer internet culture. And I just can't thank Simon enough for taking the time out of his day to sit down and talk with me. It was absolutely amazing. I really hope y'all enjoyed. I highly encourage y'all check out his channel if y'all are interested in beer reviews from America, Europe, all over the world. And you know, he puts out a ton of content, and he has a great perspective on beer and how to review them. So highly encourage you check them out. So thank you very much, Simon, and thank you all very much for watching. If y'all have any recommendations for who I should interview next, or who y'all would like me to talk to, please let me know. I got a couple more of these in the work, and I'm really excited, so I hope y'all enjoy them. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe. Remember, there is a story in every bottle, and that life is beautiful. Cheers, my friends.